are you feeling in this eclipse sandwich, as I like to call it? Or you could call it the eclipse corridor. So I spoke in the last few videos on my travels about this shadow release cycle that we started on the 5th of September 2025, and it will continue round about the 24th of September. So this is very, very, it can feel really, really rough. It can feel exhausting. You might have sleep disturbances. You might feel kind of repressed or depressed, or there's recurring triggers. So if you're somebody who suffers with inner child, be feeling restricted, feeling abandoned, feeling unseen or unheard or ignored. I know for me, I would find it a trigger if somebody ignores me, because it goes back to my childhood. I hate being ignored. I would probably rather somebody have an argument with me than being ignored. I think being ignored is like, it's like saying you don't exist. It's very inhumane. It feels very cruel. It's like a slow torture, you know. So these typical patterns, or maybe they're not even typical for you anymore. Perhaps you feel like you've healed them, you've moved away from them. There's something from a long, long, long time ago. You may be surprised during this eclipse season in September where they resurface, and it's like a trigger out of the blue. There might be a synchronicity that shows you that you're still carrying resentment, or you might, I'm just trying to, this light is crazy. You may be shown that you still have the burden of some of these energies in your system, or unresolved patterns of shame, feeling unworthy, feeling unlovable in some way, with these things coming into play now. So this is why I find autumn and winter, especially winter, really difficult to film, because the light is just so annoying. Some people are feeling a collective rage moving through them, and so the ego will find reasons or places to pin the rage, especially at this time, because it's like it's trying to find a logical explanation for the rage. Now, I'm not saying the anger and rage isn't your own. You might find that with these wounds coming up to the surface at this time, it is making you feel anger, because you're saying, "What, I thought that I'd healed that. I thought that I dealt with it." And the eclipses are showing you, well, there's some little areas here that need to be revisited. Others of you are actually tapping into, those of you who are very psychic, you're tapping into a collective fiery rage, a heated, repressed anger that is surfacing, and that is, it's very intense, and you might have reactions to things that you don't usually have. Like, you might feel suddenly anger in your fists, and a fury or a sense of injustice that is not typical of your character, right? So follow the breadcrumbs, follow the energy, because the energy is trying to tell you a story. It's trying to release something. And even if you don't feel you've the energy to get into the story at this time, which you don't have to do, by the way, to heal. You don't have to know every bit of information about the story of where this all started. Oftentimes that's unnecessary. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's useful, but it's not necessary to heal something. But to really heal something, you have to be willing to feel it. You have to be willing to somatically embody the feeling that's trying to be released with what's coming up for release. So that's where eclipse time is perfect, because eclipses create a pause. They create a moment of stillness so that things can breathe and they can reveal themselves and they can be acknowledged and confirmed and allowed to move and transform into something else. We talked about on the 7th with the surprise element. There can be a lot of shocks, surprises. The next eclipse, which is a solar eclipse in Virgo. So we've had the Pisces, we've had the dreamy, the watery, the poetic, the emotional. This is going to look at more moves, decisions, choices going forward around your daily routine, practices, your work life, your home life, like how you literally break up and spend your days, your hours which make up your days which make up your weeks. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so we'll be looking, you'll be feeling those themes coming up, and anything in that area that's just not in alignment with you anymore, and that's not jiving with you anymore, and that's not fitting. If there's something that doesn't fit, it could well and truly be eclipsed out of your life. Don't push against the energy of eclipses. I would say it's not a time to make big drastic declarations or movements. Obviously, if you have to move and you have to leave something that's toxic, don't be silly and let astrology run your life. Use logic as well as emotion, combine it together, use your heart and your head. But it's like we're being pushed to see the things and we're being pushed to make the choices. But let the dust settle, because this eclipse corridor, this eclipse sandwich, it creates a fog. There's a lot of dust being thrown up in the air at this time, and it can create a sense of even distortion or an intensity that prevents us from really seeing everything clearly. So if you don't have to rush and you don't have to push, don't. Let the universe do the work for you. Let the eclipse do the heavy lifting. Now, discussions will be had. Like, as we approach the 21st, the 22nd of September, discussions will be had. Communications are going to open up. People are going to be spurred to share what's on their heart and on their minds. They are. If something is asked of you and you have an opportunity with these eclipses to speak the truth, to say something that maybe you've been afraid to say, this is a great time to respond. Now, would I go seeking out those declarations, confirmations, reactions? No, personally, I wouldn't suggest that. Take it from me, as someone who made some big, bold moves unknowingly, without awareness, way back in my past, around eclipse season, I can look back and go, oh, because relationships that we walk away from, jobs that we storm out of, things that we, in the heat of the eclipse moment, obliterate. It's very hard to put something back together when it ended and when it finished during an eclipse. So if you are clear, if you're making a big move, if you're going to end your marriage of 20 years on the eclipse night, ask yourself, do I have to do it right now? And maybe you do. And if you do, you do you. But it's definitely a time that heightens everything. So sometimes people can have a big trigger and a big reaction during an eclipse, and they can, if they're lacking awareness, if they're lacking a deep connection to their inner truth at that time, people can often look back at around an eclipse season and go, oh, that really wasn't the best time to make such a drastic shift in my life. So just to be aware of that. It's a perfect time to respond. So maybe the same marriage of 20 years, your wife says to you, you know what, I'm not really happy in this marriage anymore, are you? And you can have that discussion, of course. Like, it's a cleansing time, it's a time of release, it's a time of truth telling, it's a time that's going to break the mold. Expect the mold that your life has become to crack open at this time. October will show you a very new life, a very new timeline, a very new perspective on things. Expect that. Be prepared for that. That's what these videos are about. And in doing so, you can respond. You can answer that question. You can think about it. You can reflect and say, you know what? We need to have a heart-to-heart about that. And we need to be really clear and really honest about where we're going forward from this point onwards, and what our hearts want. And then maybe in October, that same couple will decide that it's better for both of them, better for the kids, better for whoever, that they part ways. That's an example. That's just a very simple example of how using the eclipse energy can be a benefit. And maybe it was something that, or maybe it's a job, maybe, like, you're going to hear of lots of people who you never thought would have the courage to walk away from situations like a toxic job, or maybe there's a narcissistic family member or something, and you've listened to them harp on about it for 25 years, and then all of a sudden you're like, how's that going? And they're like, oh, I left. I just stood up and said, no, this is not for me. I'm out of here. And there's going to be a lot of relaying of surprise decisions, but really, are they surprises? Because eclipses usually end things that are way past their sell-by date. You've outgrown them, you've dragged your heels out of fear and insecurity, you've procrastinated upon making a decision. So, eclipses don't remove things willy-nilly. It's something that perhaps you saw coming for a long time, or with the shock and awe factor, which is part of some certain eclipses and alignments, it was something that needed to happen, but you didn't have all the information. That's very, very typical. And I feel like the second eclipse, around the 21st, 22nd, depending on where you are in the world, it's going to be an ending and then a new start. So it's going to eclipse something out, which, we have the aftermath. We always have an aftermath period, and we will have to tend to that. We have to manage it. It's like if you throw a bomb into a situation and it obliterates something, there's scattered material on the ground that has to be tidied and cleaned and swept. That's just the nature of this physical reality. when we have a reality split and shattered, we have the clean up of that. So it's always wise to leave some time around eclipses, leave a bit of time at the tail end, especially of these astrological events. So I spoke to you before about how the first week was going to be particularly rough, tough, challenging, intense. The last week of September is going to be quite intense as well. My feeling is that that's probably going to be, like, what I notice is usually if you've had a really rough start with the first eclipse, I would usually find, for me anyway, that the second one, so we've had the lunar, the solar, will be gentler, a bit kinder, a bit softer. But it can work, it can work both ways. If you're like, I didn't even, like, that one was fine. Like, I didn't really have any major shift or change or new information show up. Don't get too cozy, because we can often find then that what wasn't ready to be revealed then can be revealed later on, kind of thing. But they are sisters, they're twins, they're polarities, they're the solar, the lunar, they're or in this case the lunar, the solar, they're partnering each other and they're supporting each other. And then in the middle we have the eclipse corridor. So it is a portal, it is a shift of timelines, and it is a time to really tend to that inner child and to mind yourself and mind your energy. So I found that the lunar eclipse on the 7th was a rough energy for me. It was very intense, and I had to travel. I had to take a flight that day. So that kind of added to the transitory energy of everything, because I often feel like being on a plane is like going down the birth tunnel or the death tunnel. When the plane revs up and you feel, I love it actually. I love takeoff and I love landing. I think it's so exciting, and I've always loved it, and I've always found it very life-giving. But yeah, it just added to the multi-dimensional aspect. I'm up in the air in this not tiny, but relatively tiny container, pressurized container, which is just mind-blowing in itself. So look, the drill. You've got to mind yourself. You've got to get extra sleep. You've got to eat well. You've got to tend to all those important things that you don't need me to remind you of. But I will say, if you do anything, get grounding. Get yourself grounded. Get your feet on the ground. Get your shoes off. Get your soles on the earth. Real grass, real sand, real water. Get it down there. And if you can't do that, get yourself a grounding mat and make sure you take off your socks. It's got to be skin. It doesn't work through your clothes. You got to or sleep on. I have a sleep sheet now, a grounding sheet as well, so that's very helpful. So I'm going to leave it there. What else can I say? Just I've definitely faced a lot of challenges with this time, and as per usual, but I found this eclipse period particularly reflective, showing me the fractures, showing me the chips and the cracks in my life, and where I've been white knuckling it and where that's just no longer acceptable anymore. So if you've been white knuckling a particular area or a particular situation in your life, this is a great time to get clear in your mind and your heart about what your choices are and what your decision is going to be moving forward. And then as we recover from the aftermath, that is the crazy shifting beneath, the ground shifting beneath our feet that these eclipses can sometimes bring, then we are able to have that energy, that support, that clarity to Shivai, to move towards what we actually want now and what is more fitting, what actually fits us. Do the clothes on your back fit you? Are you comfortable? Or is the shirt too tight or too small or too big? Or that's the theme I'm getting for this next eclipse. It's like, oh no, this is actually hairy and itchy. It just doesn't fit me. Get it off. Like, why am I wearing something that doesn't fit? So when I say that to you, what is coming to mind? Is there something in your life that you're like, this just doesn't fit? Like this role I'm playing, this identity, this... Loads of people are having an identity crisis right now. It's just sweeping through the collective. So don't be afraid if you're one of those people. We're all feeling these intense energies, and this too shall pass. The light in me recognizes the light in you.